Hi, James Whiffen here for AE Tuts, and this is a two-part tutorial series. The first part over at CG Tuts and the second on AE Tuts is about compositing live action footage and CG glass together and getting some nice refraction and caustics, and also adding some 2D elements such as the Tuts Plus logos that you see here, and adding those in post in Nuke, and then refracting them using the normals pass that we render out of Maya. So in the first part over at CG Tuts, we did all the setup inside of Maya, and we've rendered all those render passes out. So now it's time to composite them back together inside of Nuke, as well as add in our 2D elements and refract those as if they were part of the scene. So let's go ahead and get started inside of Nuke. Let's hit read, and this is the project files that I'll be supplying, and inside of the images we have the 4 render passes. So let's just import each one of these, and these are all different render passes that we rendered from Maya in the previous course over at CG Tuts. Check that one out. And I'm also going to import the footage as well. So once we've read all of those, hit L to line them all up nicely, and the footage is slightly bigger than 1080. It's this size because we've stretched it to get rid of the lens distortion, but we're going to be working at 1320 by 742, which is just slightly larger than 720, so that when we need to reintroduce the lens distortion, our final product will be 720p. So if we hit S to get to our project settings, we want to be working in 1320 by 742, and we'll need to reformat the raw footage that we have to this format because it's too big otherwise. So let's begin by compositing the shadow. Let's hit 1 to view that. This is what it looks like in the RGB, but we're interested in the shadow render layer. That's what we want. And to comp this, we just hit M to bring up a merge node, and we'll merge the raw footage with our shadow. And in the A channel, we'll be using the RGBA, and the B will be using the shadow. And we want to minus this together. And if we hit 1 and view the RGB, we can see that we have our shadow, and it's a little dark. So what we can do is just hit G to grade this and just bring the intensity down a bit. We'll need to be manipulating the shadow render layer. So that's what it was, and I'm going to bring it down to about here. That looks a bit nicer. Okay, and now we need to composite the caustics. So let's merge the caustics, and let's go A over B and take a look at this. And if we went from the A channel, the indirect, if we just have a look at the caustics, we can see that's the RGB, but we're interested in the actual render layer. That's what we have. So if we go A as the indirect and B as the RGBA, and we're looking at the RGBA, and we're using a plus merge, we can see that this doesn't look so good. So what we want to do is really, instead of just adding this on top, let's multiply. Let's actually swap these around. So this is now A and this is B. We want to multiply the RGB by the shadow, sorry, not the shadow, the indirect, which is the caustics, and that's what we get. And then we want to add that back on to the shadow and the background footage. So we can just hit M and A plus B, and if we plus, there we go, we can see our caustics. If we disable it, they're gone, and there they are. So we can grade these up because they're quite subtle. We can multiply these. Actually, we need to be manipulating the indirect, and there we get some brighter caustics. Let's just see, there are parts where we can see a bit more of the caustics at the start. And they are quite subtle, so I'd like to bring them out. And that looks much better. That might be a little too hot. but I think they look nice, so I'm going to keep it that way. So now that we've done that, let's just move these out and organize our tree a little bit better. So this is basically the background. We've got the shadow and the caustics, and now we need to add in the man himself. If we have a look at this, this is our glass man. So before we just slap this on top of there, let's actually separate this out so that we can adjust the layers separately. In this, we've actually split it up into reflection, refraction, and specular, and those three combined create this. We also have the normals for our refraction, or refracting our 2D elements, but we don't need those at the moment. So to split this up, we can just hit merge, and we'll merge the reflection over the refraction and plug both A and B in there, and then we'll merge A over B again, and we'll merge the RGB and the spec. So if we have a look at these two, there actually is a bit of a difference. That's because this needs to be set to spec, and the top one, sorry, yeah, it's quite confusing if you have too many of the same nodes inside the properties panel. The first merge was meant to be reflection and refraction. The second one was meant to be RGBA and specular. And now if we compare the two, we can see that they're exactly the same, but now we actually have the freedom of being able to manipulate individual channels as opposed to the image as a whole. So what we could do is come in here and maybe add a glow. Oops, not a grade. If we hit tab, we can type in glow, and we could glow just the specular. So let's maybe take the brightness quite a bit down. That looks better. And let's take a look at the alpha channel. We currently don't have an alpha channel, so we're going to have to fix that. We did have an alpha channel at the start. So in the first merge, let's have one alpha channel. So if we compare this one and the merge, we still have a clean alpha, we still have a clean alpha, we still have a clean alpha, good. So now that we have an alpha, we can slap this on top of the footage with a merge node. So it'll be A over B, and get out the alpha, and that's what it looks like. And it doesn't look very interesting, and the reason for that is because the alpha is quite transparent. We're just seeing background footage, so it looks a little bit unrealistic, the fact that although we have this curved glass piece on top of this straight line, the line is still straight. It should be bent, it should be refracted by this glass. So a way that we can composite this more realistically is, instead of just going slapping it on top, we can fill out the alpha of this. So instead of it being transparent, it's solid, and that way we'll get the nice refracted background as opposed to this very boring background. So that's what we have the matte for. This is just a solid alpha of our character. So let's just copy his alpha channel over here. And there we go. And now if we go A over B, this looks a lot better. This is no longer reflecting this image plane. It's actually reflecting and refracting 360-degree panorama HDR of this scene. So I'm just going to go back to a different point in time and maybe do a little bit of color correction. I want to sort of make him a little bit brighter. So we can just come in here and add in a grade, and I want to grade actually before we merge them, I want to grade the refraction and give that 1.5 gain, make it a bit brighter. Now let's add in some 2D elements to Refract, and to do that we'll need to have our match moved camera. So inside of Maya, you can just select your camera, and you can just export that selection as an FBX, but I find that is quite buggy. So I've downloaded a Python script, it's free, it's called Maya to Nuke. So just type in Maya to Nuke import star, and this will run through and bake out all the data for this camera. So we'll just wait for this to do its thing. So when that's finished, you get this Maya to Nuke window, and here's the PF data render cam, and we can just go edit, generate Nuke script, and it succeeded. So we just have to head to Nuke and press Ctrl V. That seems easy enough. So let's just paste it in here, and we get the scene, but we don't need that. We just need the camera itself, and this is it here. So let's add in a card 3D, and that's plugged into the camera, and I want to just import the Tuts Plus logos, so I'll drag those in and start with the CG Tuts logo, because that was the first part of the tutorial. And if we just hit 1 on here, we can see this is our logo, and it starts at the origin of the scene. So if we just copy this reformatted background footage, we can just merge A on top of B and have a look at that. So that's the origin of our scene, and we can see it's very small. So let's bump up the uniform scale to 50. Okay. So we can see it's sticking there. And let's move this card back. I want it to be behind the chessboard and up a bit. Basically, I want this to be behind the character, so he will refract this 2D element. And I'll just copy this matte again and merge A over B, so that we can see when the which parts of the logo are behind the character. So let's start at the start. I want the logo to start off screen and fly in, so maybe at frame 22 we can get this card and set a key, and if we just clear the properties panel except for the card, we won't have the entire timeline filled with the keyframes of the match move camera. So let's say it takes 10 frames to get in, so let's set another key, and back in frame 22 I move it way out in X, so it flies in. I want it to fly in a bit further than that, something like this. Move it up a bit so we can read the writing. And just make sure I didn't really want to affect the Y. I did, so I'm just going to delete this keyframe. I just wanted to fly in on X. So let's go to the X now and hit F to fill, and we can bring out the Bezier a bit, and if you hold down Control, you can manipulate the curve further than you normally can. I want it to have a very nice ease in, ease out. So let's hit L to play that back. That's nice. So that can stay until about frame 90. And then we can set a key. Well, it's moved quite a bit further over just because the camera is doing that, so let's not have it come so far to begin with, or maybe we could just move these keys over. I'll move them over in the dope sheet because it's easier that way. So maybe they come in at 40. just so the camera's had time to move over a bit, and I'll move it